Hello viewers, welcome to the online learning portal of House of English with me Raksha Soni. Dear students, most of the time we judge people and situations apparently without knowing the truth or the facts about them, and often our conclusions are colored with prejudices. Even though we know the famous saying that appearances can be deceptive, yet we react instantly by looking at someone's appearance, look, color, etc. The situation intensifies in the case of people suffering from some sort of disability. The same issue is being dealt in the 6th chapter of Vistas, On the Face of It by Susan Hill, where the writer portrays the attitude of society towards the disabled people, at the same time writes about the sufferings and plight and grief of those who are disabled. In this video, I am going to give a brief introduction about the author and the chapter. We'll also give a detailed summary of the chapter. I will discuss the characters of the play and will also reflect upon the themes of the chapter. Let's start with the author. Susan Hill was born on the coast of North Yorkshire, England in the middle of World War II. She is best known for her gothic ghost stories and crime novels, but she has also written plays, short stories and children's stories. Her most popular works are The Woman in Black, The Mist in the Mirror, and I Am the King of the Castle. She has won numerous literary honors, including the Somerset Maugham Award, and in the year 2012, she was appointed by the Queen as the Commander of Order of the British Empire for her services to the literature. Before I introduce the chapter to you, I would like to share the historical background of the story and also tell you the setting of the play. The play is set in rural England and sometimes around the World War II. We can assume so because of the mentioning of the garden and the attitude of the society, and the event mentioned that one of the protagonists of the story has lost his leg in the war and the real one was blown off by a bomb. Moving ahead with the key facts about the play which you should know and remember from the point of view of MCQ based question answers. The full title of the play is On the Face of It, written by Susan Hill. The setting of the play is rural and there are two protagonists in the story. Protagonists are the characters around which the story's plot revolves. So the two protagonists of the story are Mr. Lamb, an old man, and Derry, a 14-year-old boy. And there is an antagonist of the story, that is Derry's mother, and to some extent we can consider the society as one of the character also. Let's understand the title of the chapter. The title of the chapter reads On the Face of It, which is an expression used when you are describing a situation by just seeing the surface or apparently or ostensibly. But when the same thing is put together or considered with facts and truth, the conclusions come completely different than what you have presumed the situation to be. The play features an old man and a little boy. They meet in farmer's garden. The old man strikes a friendship with the little boy. The brief association of that old man with the little boy changed the life of the little boy forever. The play beautifully yet grimly brings out the sad world of the physically challenged people. It also brings into focus that The actual pain or the inconvenience caused due to physical impairment doesn't trouble them much, but the attitude of the people towards them hurts a lot. Detailed summary of the play on the face of it. Mr. Lamb, an old man, is sitting in his garden when he encounters Derry, a 14-year-old boy. Derry is startled to see Lamb as he thought the house and the garden to be empty. Mr. Lamb remains calm and invites the boy to sit with him and enjoy nature. As they talk, Derry feels uncomfortable, reserved and wary, and also somewhat defiant. He assumes that the old man is afraid of him because of his appearance, and it is revealed that half of Derry's face has been burned by acid, so most people avoid or pity him. Mr. Lamb seems unconcerned by this, and he tries to make Derry understand through the example of wheat and flour that we should not judge things by their appearance, rather respect the life in it. There is no reason to elevate one aspect and demean the other. He also gives the example of bees that hum, and some people consider bees buzz. It all depends on the attitude and the outlook of people. He further says that he too has a tin leg. The real one was blown off in the war. The neighborhood children call him Lamy Lamb because of this, but he doesn't mind as it fits. Mr. Lamb comforts Derry, advising him to ignore what people say or do and pay attention to plenty other things worth cherishing. Mr. Lamb gives the reference of the fairy story of Beauty and the Beast, but Derry doesn't approve the story, which gives the message about caring for good heart and deeds and not just looks. He further adds that people tell him inspiring stories to console him. No one will ever kiss him except his mother, and that too on the other side of his face. The two converses, with Derry complaining about how people treat them and mentions about the comment a woman in the street made about his face. Mr. Lamb tells him to ignore them and try to find comfort in nature. He invites the boy to help him pick crab apples later in the day. Derry explained that he avoids people because of the way they react to him, and in response, Lamb tells a story of a man who locked himself in his room to avoid any kind of accident or rejection, but ended up dying when a pitcher fell on his head in bed. Mr. Lamb revives all the almost dead feelings of Derry towards life and motivates him to think positively about life. They discuss Mr. Lamb's house, and Derry likes the fact that there are no curtains on the windows. Mr. Lamb reasons out that he does not believe in shutting things out and shutting things in, but he wants to be in unison with nature. Due to the kind and inspirational talks of Mr. Lamb, Derry feels comfortable and tells about things he likes, but sadly remembers the concern of his family towards his future because of his disfigured face. Gradually, Derry opens up and asks Mr. Lamb if he has friends. Mr. Lamb says he has many friends and people come and go at will in this house and garden. The gate is open, but Derry isn't sure if he believes this and finds him peculiar. Derry also worries that he might scare away Lamb's other friend if he were to come back and meet them. Mr. Lamb motivates him to take the risk of meeting people and stop being afraid of them and learn to live life the other way round. Derry considers Mr. Lamb's offer to help him pick crab apples, but says that he would have to let his mother know where he is first, and he lives 3 miles away. Mr. Lamb says that he could run home and then come back later in the day. Lamb, after advising him, goes to tend his bees, assuming that Derry won't actually come back as the boys run away. At Derry's house, his mother forbids him from going back to see Mr. Lamb again, and as she heard rumors about the old man, she thinks that Mr. Lamb is an eccentric man. Derry, who is inspired and has promised Mr. Lamb to come back, declares that he hates living in this house and she cannot stop him from going to see Mr. Lamb. Ignoring his mother's orders, Derry runs off. Mr. Lamb is picking crab apples by himself when he falls from his ladder to the ground. Just then, Derry appears. He kneels by the old man and says, "I came back, Lammy Lamb, I did come back." At the end of the play, Mr. Lamb falls and seems to have died, but it is clear that he has touched Derry deeply. As the boy runs to Lamb's body, Derry starts weeping, which is a sure sign of a bond between the two, despite the briefness of their relationship. The play then ends, leaving it unclear whether Derry will remain withdrawn once again in the face of his new pain, or will he continue to follow the old man's example by seeking out connection with others and remaining open to the entire range of human experience. It is ironical that when he searches a new foothold to live happily, he finds Mr. Lamb dead. In this way, the play depicts the heart-rending life of physically disabled people with their loneliness, aloofness and alienation. But at the same time, it is almost a true account of people who don't let a person live happily. Let's now discuss the characters of the play. As I have already told you, there are three main characters in the play. The two protagonists are Mr. Lamb and Derry, and the antagonist is Derry's mother. At the same time, we have also considered the society as one of the antagonists. The first protagonist of the play is Mr. Lamb. He is one of the central characters of the play, an old man, a war veteran. He has rendered his services during the Second World War and has lost one of his legs in the war. The real one was blown off by a bomb, and now he has a tin leg. He owns a big house and a huge garden, but sadly he lives alone. And he keeps himself busy growing crab apples, keeping bees, reading books, making toffees and jellies. He has been portrayed as a wise, contemplative soul who enjoys observing, listening to and learning from other people and the natural world. Despite his own disability, he keeps an optimistic outlook towards life. Unlike Derry, he accepts his fate and learns many things in spite of his handicap. In his conversation with Derry, he expresses a philosophy of openness and non-judgmental connection. Although the world is not kind to him, children walk at him and call him Lammy Lamb, and Derry's mother's opinions were against him. But he is kind to all, welcomes all, and keeps a sense of dignity inherent in all people. Mr. Lamb says that he has hundreds of friends and people like to come and go in his home, in his garden, but it is unclear if that is true, because Derry suspects it, as he did not find any friend coming to Mr. Lamb's garden. In fact, Mr. Lamb is lonely and unhappy, and that no one actually comes to visit him. He admits that he longs for a company and is helpless. Apparently, Mr. Lamb, who appears to be a strong, outwardly man, but actually he is suffering from a sense of alienation and loneliness. The other protagonist of the story is Derry. or Derek as his full name is. He is a boy of 14 with a badly burned face. The accident left him scarred not just physically but mentally and emotionally too. Adding to his woes, the reaction and the comments of the people and the dehumanizing pity led him to isolate himself from the world, and under the fear of being hurt, he avoids all. He has developed a negative attitude towards life and himself. He internalizes the way people see him and considers himself as a monster because of his disability. Unlike Mr. Lamb, whom the whole world has alienated, Derry has learned to seclude himself from human interaction altogether. Derry's reservation is dealt kindly by Mr. Lamb and his philosophy of openness and acceptance. The interaction with Mr. Lamb about what matters in life changed Derry's perception, and he was able to break the self-created and the forced upon barriers. He becomes confident and shifts his focus from what he does not have to what he has. The antagonist of the story, Derry's mother, is being portrayed by Susan Hill in dual shade. At one time, she appears to be overprotective, but at the same time, she contributes to his isolation and robbing Derry of his dignity. Her treatment and overtly pity solidifies Derry's belief in the hypocrisy of the world. Lastly, the character of society. The society largely seems to be indifferent towards the suffering of the disabled people. Derry shows the cruel side of the society. He has always been a victim of its hatred, disgust and fear. People sometimes comfort them and ask them to keep a brave face, but themselves do not take any effort to reduce their pain. For society, disabled people are a terrible thing to look at, and so tries to push them away from the mainstream. Various themes run through the play. The major ones are disability and perception. The second one is the sense of loneliness and alienation. The third one is appearances could be deceptive. Let us talk about them in depth. The theme of disability and perception. The two main characters of On the Face of It suffer from a physical disability, but they react to their disabilities in very different ways. The 14-year-old Derry had half of his face badly burned by acid in an accident, while Mr. Lamb has lost one of his legs in World War II. Now let us see Derry's perspective. Derry shuts himself from the society. His bitterness for the world grew on account of the way people treat him. They either pity him or are afraid of him. Derry considers his disfigured face the cause of all miseries. Because of the comments and reactions of the people, he believes himself as hideous. He develops a hatred for himself and towards the society. His perception towards his disability is of shame, anger, disgust and fear. Derry rightly blames his family and others for it. Let us now see Mr. Lamb's perspective towards his disability. Mr. Lamb's disability is not as immediately obvious as Derry's. Mr. Lamb's view is somewhat subtle. He doesn't deny the difficulty of being physically disabled or pretend that things aren't sometimes different and harder for him and Derry than for most people. But he does not feel ashamed of his disability, neither he cares for what people feel about him. He accepts his handicap and tries to cope up with challenges it puts to him. Unlike Derry, he doesn't wait for the world to receive him with his impairment. Instead, he keeps himself open for all. He focuses on what matters in life and ignores things that hurt. Although the two hold different viewpoints, owing to the difference in age, experience, and individual nature, yet Mr. Lamb's positive attitude, openness deeply influenced Derry, and he was able to shift from his pessimistic approach to an optimistic one. The third perspective would be of society. Let's see what society thinks about the disabled people. The outlook of society towards disabled people is brought through the conversation between Derry and Mr. Lamb. Derry talks clearly indicate that the society has either been pitying or cruel towards the people with physical impairment. In case of Mr. Lamb, the society seems to care less for the people with disability, and also often their opinions about them are biased. The society alienates them and pushes them into loneliness and sorrow. Talking about the second theme of the chapter, alienation and loneliness. The play majorly is a conversation between just two characters, which itself prove that the element of inclusion in the society is missing. Because of their respective physical disabilities, Derry and Mr. Lamb are treated differently from the other people, and this leads them to lives of relative isolation, whether willing or not. Derry has secluded himself mostly willingly, as he hates how people treat him because of his badly burned face, and to some extent it is also imposed by his mother. Mr. Lamb is a more complicated figure. He lives alone in a big house but leaves his garden gate open and welcomes visitors of all kinds. He claims that he has hundreds of friends and that people come and go in his house and garden. But it's also unclear if it's true, and he does admit that the neighborhood children mock him and call him Lammy Lamb. On the face of it explores some of the ways people separate themselves from others and alienate certain people, and shows how damaging loneliness and isolation can be. At the same, it also illustrates the desire of people to bond with others. Alienating others and secluding oneself can be a means of self-preservation, but as the play shows, this isolation only leads to greater unhappiness in the end. The last theme of the play in discussion: appearances can be deceptive. The play evidently brings this fact that most often our impressions about people are based on their appearances. People consider Mr. Lamb lonely and eccentric man, but the fact is that he is kind and yearns for a company. He respects the dignity of people and believes in equality. Derry appears to be an abominable boy with an ugly face. Since he is a constant object of people's hateful looks, pity and neglect, he has developed reclusive tendencies. But it is revealed later in the play that he too has a tender heart. He is sensitive and wants to befriend people. Derry's mother appears to be overprotective and worried about his future. She seems to save her son from being hurt, but actually she is the one who discriminates between the ugly and the good. She kisses on the good side of his face Instead of making Derry courageous and love himself despite of all, she makes him timid. It is remarkable to note that the play doesn't offer any specific comment or critique on how the society must treat or react to the people with disabilities. It also doesn't mention any laws regarding it. It only conveys a simple message through the intimate conversation between the two main characters, Mr. Lamb and Derry, that the society must be kinder towards the people with disabilities. Society needs to change its perspective towards the people suffering from this physical impairment. It simply sends a message that the disabilities must not be considered as things that need to be hated or hidden away or be ashamed of. It is rather something that should be considered as simple fact of a person's experience and must be regarded with some humanity and care. The play's title clearly specifies and asks the readers to look beyond what is on the face of it when dealing with disabilities. With the hope that you have understood the different elements that I have discussed, I thank you all for watching the video.